related. And if you're working with the realignment of structures in the body, the raising of tissue that is diseased into a level that is healthy, we're working with frequencies. And if you want to look inside the body from a more subtle level, you need to alter the level at which you're able to feel in, to penetrate. And also, in any way that you can sense or feel in, it's got to be able to be interpreted. And against what do we interpret? Now, I think we really begin to move when our higher self looks down and sees, I think I can do something with this incarnation. And then they start to work upon us, to work within us. I have a feeling, and you don't need to agree with this at all, that there are levels within us which actually are not at all interested in us, which really is not true. But it means they don't know very much about us, and we don't know very much about them. Are we allowed to say such things? Because the working of the light scientists is to clear the shadow and the fog of accumulated but unclaimed or unclaimed history. If everything that we think and every word that we utter and every force that we put in has to be in some time and in some way recycled or brought into the point of synthesis to work within the whole fertility of creation. And then we think of all the man's inhumanity to man and all the forces, the thoughts that tend to be destructive and to be aggressive and self-seeking. What happens to them? They don't just disappear. It's like clearing the garbage off the streets of Napoli. It doesn't work because the mafia have got control of it and nobody clears the garbage, collects in the streets. And so, between the higher worlds and this world, there is a great deal of debris. In bringing through the patterns, the karmic patterns from the higher self through to the fourth dimensional levels, the karmic matrix, and then through to the physical level, there's a lot of shadows. There's a lot of uncleansed history. And these light beings, these light scientists, are very much involved. They are drawn to whichever system of planets or whichever planet or whichever star system is under threat in relation to its own evolutionary impulses. And I think about this because I'm always interested when people make a link to extraterrestrials or beings from other systems or planets. And very often what comes through is, Earthlings, you have to wake up. You have to stop this, or we get a sort of a finger that says, Earthlings. And as if mankind has to take responsibility. To me, that's not very helpful or practical. And it's a statement which takes doesn't take us anywhere. The impulses that come in that encourage a greater level of responsibility and of recycling of these interdimensional shadows, that's practical. And it doesn't come with a lecture. And it doesn't come with a sense of earthlings. So, when we look into the karmic matrix, the karmic patterns, there is a lot of confusion about the purity of our karmic belonging. So then I look into the way in which, from my perspective, which is only very limited, but nevertheless I'm a bit occupied with it, how the interdimensional light work is working. And what is the inner school? Each year there is an impulse which begins to show itself more more significantly. Last year, for me, last year was what showed itself was the divine spark became visible in the way in which there is an influence awakening within the brain. When you look into the color and you look into the energy fields of people, you know something is there and something is happening and you don't exactly know what it is. And at the same time, you contemplate the experience because it is not a direct perception, it is an experience of an impression and a feeling. And then there's a sense of occupation and preoccupation that goes on. And then it shows itself. There is a sense of an aha moment. And what fascinated me last year, it fascinates me right now very, very much, is that when a child is born, when a baby is born, and just an instant before it is associated into its family of origin and into the whole structure, just for like a micro moment, it is a universal child. It is a child that could be anybody's child. It could live anywhere. It could take on any... It's like a stem cell that could become any cell in the body if it was needed. So that there is a moment when every child, just before it becomes the individual connected into the family and the circumstances, is a universal child. And I thought that's really interesting. So what is the source of this universal child, this universal moment? And then we see the connection from the divine spark, which cannot be corrupted. And that enters into the left side of the brain usually. And then there is a connection to the humanities in evolution, which is the other side of the brain. And if these impulses show themselves, there's two things. The one is whatever shows itself is ready to be seen or is available to be seen. And then if also they become in a certain sense visible, they are visible because they are active. It's an activation. Now, the divine spark enters into its own evolution through the humanities to which it is ascribed. The humanities in evolution is such an incredibly interesting process. I can always recommend, there's a book called The Outline of Occult Science by Rudolf Steiner. And there you have to read the book many times. But it's so interesting to see from an almost intangible essence of just warmth, gradually it develops and evolves into the level and the state that we are now and is continuously evolving. And in each state and level in which it evolves, the evolving of that level, of that, as it were, that being in the making, is the purpose of the incarnation of many remarkable angelic forces and beings. So their development and their evolution works upon us and awakens us as we develop and grow. And it's not something that you sort of think, oh, I have to learn this. It's more, does this describe what I've been feeling, but I never had words to it before? Is this an impression of what is going on? But I wasn't sure how to create any structure. It was formless. And we realized that the evolution of all the different levels of consciousness works upon the evolution of those developing levels of consciousness. And it opens up thought, it opens up speech, it opens up the abilities of that we take, in a way, I don't think we take them for granted, but we take them because we're very familiar with them, capacities within us. And all of these capacities need to be awakened, they need to be nurtured, they need to be brought into light, brought into being. And so the universe works upon itself through all of its different levels, and we're a part of this. And then, we could ask the question, well, what is there in my evolution that I'm working on, or we as mankind is working on, that part of our evolution is to support the evolution of these species, these life forms, these states of growth that are in our sphere, as it were. Now, I always think with all of these ideas and thoughts that I'm an old gold prospector. I feel I've got them all there, but I'm actually panning them in the river, or I'm sifting out the sand and throwing away the stones and seeing where the gold nuggets, where the points of light. And I wonder then in the life that we lead, the way in which we are involved in the life that we need is sorting out what are the gold nuggets and what are those parts that maybe there's another use for them. In the country that I come from, it was built upon gold mines. And they thought they mined the gold, and then they 1 ounce for every ton of stuff. And great, made everybody rich. And then they discovered that all the stuff that they threw away was a very rich source of uranium. So they took the gold out and threw away the uranium. And then they discovered that the uranium was probably going to be the basis of the next millennium in how we're going to use perhaps nuclear fusion rather than making atomic bombs, but we can make free energy perhaps. Maybe that's got a part to play. But certainly in all the debris that had no value to them had more value than the ounce that they were taking out for every ton. Now, we then say, we've got the light scientists upstairs, and they're working with the supporting the journey of the soul. And they can work with people without volume being of any consequence. They can work with any number of people because they work with a state of relationship through harmonic accord or harmonic frequencies. And these are simultaneously within a certain, if you like, within a certain horizon. We're in the immediate. It doesn't happen. It is here and it is now. And in the beginning, we worked by having just the outline of the human body, and we would shine our colored lights at the screen. And we had a request from the person, and then we would, from our own way, translate that request into a way of working on the structure, on the chakra centers, on the organs and systems of the body, on the nervous system, circulation, whatever. And the the light scientists would bounce it off the picture and work into the subtle structures of the person. And then they created what they called a satellite, a light or color satellite over each continent. And then they would be able to enter into the frequency of each individual at whatever level they were the most receptive, and then according to their karmic blueprint, to be able to bring in an influence or an encouragement that would not take their work away from them, but would do the opposite. It would bring them in more in direct contact with why they are here and what they have come to do. and in that sense, direct contact with other people with whom they could relate. Now, when you look at it from not so much a higher level, but a higher frequency of perspective and perception, we're looking at generations of people, and we're looking at ideas that are developing over generations, sometimes over centuries or even longer. And we are looking at forces that are at work within races, and the way the forces work within the races is also to do with the psychic structure that is a little bit different in each racial group. So that each group has got its own areas of gift, of genius, of special qualities. It's got its flavors and colors. And so there's a uniqueness within each, say, root race, and also the way in which they come together. And I knew a doctor from Pakistan who worked mostly with homeopathy, and he said in his country, everybody came from different tribal roots. And each tribe had a certain homeopathic signature that it was very straightforward to choose the remedies for the different problems, knowing which particular racial or tribal group they came from. And then he was in England, and he said, I come here and I can't do it. Everybody's mixed up with everybody else. There's no signature that is consistent enough for me to work with the way in which I would diagnose and prescribe in Pakistan. I thought that was really interesting. And then so coming to England, you've got to do it each individual. You really have to read the signs and see the drug picture, and you can't think, oh, he's yeah, we know them, and it will work. So the differentiation becomes complex, and the different root races are also the roots for the great belief systems. They come in through a particular racial group, which really means through a particular psychic structure that can focus, can receive, and can anchor, and then disseminate. And then the world becomes into a world culture more. What I love when I come here, as I always am pleased to see and to remind, is that there is a world culture in miniature when I come here. And I always see the future of the world culture, a nucleus of this here. And I think it's amazing. And if it's here, it means that this area of the earth must also have a good energy, that it can take it in and can anchor it, and can help in the sustaining of this. You know, where is the entry point into the potential for world culture? For me, this is definitely one entry point. And something is active here, which then, if you put an acupuncture needle into this part of the body of mankind, it's going to do something that will create a harmonic resonance in lots of areas that might be a little offline or a little out of sync, and they will tend to adjust and to harmonize themselves. It means that the differences that create suspicion and then aggression will not go past a certain point. They will reach a certain point and dissolve. From my teacher, part of the continuous war between the countries in Europe was the difference of light tension or spiritual tension, but certainly of light tension that could be anchored in a country amongst a different nation or a different group of people. And if one country could hold too much light or more light, it would create an imbalance. There needs to be a balance that all goes forward together. But when the impulses are not consistent enough throughout many different groups, it always develops along the borderlines the sense of suspicion, conflict, and then that side of our nature which can be motivated aggressively can be stirred up. Now, what's interesting in Europe at the moment anyway is that there is both sides now. There is a sense of no borders. You know, Europe is a country with no borders between all the different little countries. There's 27 countries that cooperate together. And then there's an impulse in Great Britain that decides to withdraw from this. You know, what is the energy or the impulse that entered in at the time, and why was such a choice offered, and why was there so much suspicion that we make our own laws and we have our own whatever, and nobody from the center of Belgium is going to tell us what to do, and all that's good dialogue for future suspicion and aggression. And the impulse towards unity, that doesn't have to be a federal state with one central control of everybody, but it could be unity within the diversity of each individual country, but still unity. And you can work anywhere and travel anywhere and study anywhere and pay your taxes anywhere. And you can feel it. It's almost there, and then somebody comes and says boo, and it sort of upsets the apple cart, but not too much. And so my feeling is that there is something going on in Europe that for the last 70 years, it's the longest period in recorded history where there hasn't been total war between two countries. It's the longest period in recorded history. It's ridiculous. And then where I'm living, they say, well, Brexit. And I think, what a bunch of momparas. It's a very nice word, which just means not very intelligent or bright individuals, you know. And so I'm living in Mompara land. And if it's working well enough, even as it tends to go out of balance, there's something which comes as a counterbalance. Now, if we look at it from upstairs, from the fourth dimensional satellite, color satellites that work with the color therapy and light therapy programs, amongst all the people we with, which is just a tiny little nothing, but it's for us our work in many ways. It's working through each individual who asks into their family of origin, into their country, their villages, into the ley lines of the earth, into the history that is sometimes stuck in buildings and in atmospheres. As if you sleep in some of the forests of Europe, you'll hear them, the soldiers still fighting in the middle of the night wakes you up. The wars are still going on at an astral level. It's like there's been a video, and these videos exist at the subtle level, we say at an etheric astral kind of level. And there the battles go on. It's like somebody's replaying it. It's got a loop on the tape and it just replays itself. Or you go into certain towns, and not at any time, but at certain times, and suddenly you're out of time. You're back in the Middle Ages. And that scares me a little bit, actually. It's a bit strange. So the individual that we work with is an entry point into their family of origin, but also into their country, the earth where they're living, the space there. And also, it always has to be voluntary. in this interdimensional work or into the light work with a spiritual impulse, it is never imposed, it's never forced. It's always voluntary, even though we don't know what we're volunteering for. It's through a sense of recognition or a sense of attraction or a sense of, it's in our nature, it's in a sense of what inside us is a prayer that we never stop praying, even while we go to work and go through all the ups and downs. And so, how many people do we need to work with? You know, as it says at the time of Sodom and Gomorrah, how many good people will save the city? How many good, even 10 good people, and there weren't even 10 good people, according to the source that Donald Trump might agree was a good source. What do they call it? False information or?
Fake news.
Fake news. I love that. I don't like it, but I love it. I think there's stories in the Bible, you know, it sounds like fake news. Who put a who? Where did that story come from? Now, there are, when we look into the fourth dimensional level, and we look into the astral body, and this is purely my perspective, my perception, it's not the gospel. I'm like a journalist that's traveling and reporting. And it's open to misinterpretation as much as it's reporting it as clearly and as accurately as I can appreciate it. When we look into the astral body, we find the areas of collective static. And collective static is not recycling of the shadows of the past, but just the repeating of them. There is within the astral body is within the deep subconscious aspect of our consciousness. You know, okay, it's just a label. It says the deep subconscious, but it means it's exactly there. It's in the deep subconscious areas, and in these areas are the basis of how we respond to forces that tend to support or manipulate. And we live within a world of advertisements that tend to try to encourage us to buy this or sell that or do that. And where I'm living now, they're going to have an election again soon, and all these people that are not very interesting at all, they're trying to motivate everybody to, they've got the best ideas, and if you vote for them, absolutely your life will turn into an amazing experience, and so on. And so, in the fourth dimensional level, there is almost like to me anyway, it looks like thought forms that have crystallized, and the light that can work upon them, in a way, the alchemy of light that can change something from a very low and dense frequency into a much more subtle and a much more interesting and vital and inspiring frequency. It cannot penetrate very easily. And it doesn't happen because the extraordinary archangelic and forces, they can do it, but it's not their job. Their job is to encourage us how to do it, really. They can do a certain amount, absolutely, and they'd love to, and they can do anything if it was wise and right to do it. And they enjoy it. But they have to work with the discipline of the voluntary response of ourselves at our human level, not even knowing who we are really, and wondering if we use the word astral body, well, what is that? You know, and is there an inner school? I don't want to go there. I had enough of the outer school, and I was forced to go to school. And why do you have to call it a school? And why are we always learning lessons? You know, have you been through a difficult experience? Well, what have you learned? I don't know, I didn't learn anything. I just had a horrible time. And now I want to watch Miss Marple, you know. So we see that the light from the higher self in the causal body and in the fifth dimension, how's that, is bringing the higher frequency of the divine spark, of the purpose of this divine spark, our essence, our overself, our soul uniqueness is working through the humanities in evolution. And as much as history, that is, all of history has to be claimed. It has to be claimed. It has to be brought into the light. It's a form of family healing where you work to discover all the secrets of your family that you don't know, I don't want to know them. So they've got to be brought into the light. They've got to be resolved. And if you're a good Christian, it's got to be brought into the Christ light. If you're whoever you are, if you're a good whoever you are, it's got to be brought into the light of that is the source of your own inspiration spiritually. It needs to be, what's the word is there's a word, but it needs to be raised up into the light. It needs to be embraced by the light. And it is. It is. But it needs, you gather together the people who have died, but we never knew where they died. There was no sending off, there was no blessing them, there was no freeing them. People have been criminals and they've been lost somewhere in the history of the family, people that have taken their own lives and the whole business. Now, there are just beautiful souls that have gone through experiences, but the consequence of their experiences need to be brought into the light. They need to be somehow dug into the earth. They need to be the basis of future fertility. And working with the light and color into the astral body, that is then inspired a little bit more from the oversoul, from the light of our higher self. It sets into motion states of consciousness or states of response within us. And it only needs to shift very slightly our perspective, and then we are not subject to the repetition of forces that dominate the point in our brain and in our mind which deals with choice. Who says yes to yes and yes to no? Who decides inside me if I take an extra cup of coffee or that's enough for today? And then in all the areas of addiction and compulsion, what are the forces that are working upon me or working upon mankind? Parasitic type of forces. And if you can work with certain frequencies of light through the voluntary response, the voluntary recognition within individuals, and that individual becomes an entry point into their family and their community and their country and their history and the whole of the connection to the earth. If we describe it in that way, but it doesn't immediately then have to be translated into a structure that we all have to follow. It has to be voluntary. It has to be free choice, and we choose to work together. And there are no rules and regulations except the laws and rules of the land we live in. But then we need to understand what is cosmic moral law. What is the nature of the cause and effect, or whatever we do to ourselves in a certain form and in a certain way. And if this is being encouraged, and in every family there are shadows, are each of us then even just by the connection to the light work, bringing a radiance into our family that doesn't need a lot of psychotherapy and work. It only needs the receptivity to an impulse which encourages a slight different attitude or a slight different recognition of how it is possible to make choices that are more life-affirming than repetition of old patterns. Now, always and in every life there are points of light which are points of recognition, points of inspiration. A spark opens within us. It never goes out. These are timeless moments. They travel with us. All our nonsense also travels with us. The history that we haven't resolved has a sort of a photographic factor, and then it happened 50 years ago or 20 generations ago. It's here now. It's nothing to do with time. It's everything to do with its circulation, or in terms of the beauty, the moments of enlightenment, or when the divine touches us. There are moments of synthesis where these points of light can be recollected, they can be opened, can be awakened. And so we say that the light work, the light scientists can encourage, and always encourage, but not impose or insist, the way in which we can support each other, the way in which your example can inspire me at a certain moment of self-doubt and confusion. And then it can happen individually, but it mostly, I feel, happens more collectively when at a certain point there is a consensus, but it's not to do with voting somebody in or out. It's a consensus through our own inner feeling. We choose not to live in a certain way, not to be enslaved by structures or conspiracies quite so much. And then these little points of light are like a treasure. They are sufficiently, I would just say sufficiently significant, that then a higher force of light can enter in and it will not be destructive. High frequencies are, if we're not ready, the bulb will blow if too much electricity goes in too quickly. Everything needs to be at the level that it can be received safely. And our level of safely receiving switching the lights on is improving. The problems which we work with, we haven't solved them, but the problems of human rights, the problems of rights of women, the problems of the rights of children, and also there are conferences now about what are the rights of the animals that are very close to mankind, primates and gorillas and orangutans. They have a certain level which is not so far from us. And what sort of rights there are debates now, conferences where it's brought up as we understand more of the consciousness of animals, how they feel, and how they can also, in their way, have a life which, if we translate it into our language, is very close to what we might feel in a certain sense. And what rights do we give them? So we have animal rights, and now it's very popular on a menu. They give you the normal option, the vegetarian option, the vegan option. This was a conference for humanists, atheists, and vegans. It was in Zurich a couple of years ago. Brilliant, some brilliant speakers, and what excited me was such a conference could happen. Humanists, atheists, and vegans on the menu, and I think Nietzsche would have liked it, actually, because there were people there who were very much, the word God is unnecessary to use at all. not so much God is dead, but God isn't. and the humanistic philosophy, my friend who is very much involved with this now in working for her doctorate, she did a master's in religious science. And it's almost what do they call it now? Anyway, if we take religion and science in one sentence, what are they doing together? And so she did a master's in religious science, which actually looks at the what they then call the scientific basis, the archaeological basis of all the facts that we can ascertain in our modern, we call it our modern way, of the foundations of religions and all the structures and stories and everything like that. Certainly by the end of her studies, she didn't want to be a Christian anymore. And she was very more towards the Buddhist, actually. And she did her thesis in Christian ritual in India. So she went to India too. There are some there's a beautiful man whose name has just jumped some other part of my memory, and who's built monasteries, centers of you say Christian thought in India, but if you look at the pictures on the wall, Jesus looks like a guru, beautifully, and all the icons in a Christian look as if they could come out of the panoply of all the beautiful gods that are in the Indian tradition, in the Hindu tradition. My favorite is Ganesha anyway, because he likes sweeties and he clears all problems away. And the clinic where I work, which is my friend's clinic, he's got a very big brass Ganesha. You come right in and he's there. And he, I don't think he really knew who Ganesha was or is. He just saw it and he thought, we've got to have this in the clinic. And so if we then say that the color therapy that from my side we're involved with is an organized method and structure and all of that, but let's let it go from belonging to a group that's doing it and in a certain formal sense. And we say that we have only been working with it so it could be thoroughly researched by the scientists until they can inspire many other people in lots of different ways for the same principles to work. So it's not that everybody has to come and work with our color therapy and our light work. But up to now, I would have always encouraged that. And I say, yes, every student should do it and everything. Now I see that actually it was part of a developmental process because they're working with light frequencies from other star systems that have never entered the Earth before. They've got to align these frequencies with the solar rays and with the type of rays which come in from our moon, but also the planets. And they then have to adjust it so that it enters in, it brings an impulse that is supportive with where mankind, in a general sense, is at the moment, and then can also be adjusted to where each individual is within their state of asking. And then, having reached a certain point, our little place, which was just a place for research, really, it's still there, it's fun, and we work with it, and the research goes on. But in fact, the work has gone, they call it viral now, it's gone global. And many people can be supported and encouraged and overshadowed or overlighted with the principles of the light and color work without calling it light and color work directly. And that's what I think is very exciting. And so when we talked in the beginning of the importance that every student should be anchored to their own inner team, and also should be anchored to the school that is behind the work that we do. It's not a school that you belong to and that's like a sect of some kind. It is brotherhood and sisterhood of light, really, and which even then is almost like saying too much, calling it a brotherhood or a sister. It is a spiritual belonging of the frequencies of love and compassion, and of the principles of every great world teacher, cosmic teacher.